theme of politicization. Angela Zambrano discusses that in her Chicano Studies classes in Sheffield Community College, that, of course, what happens with Chicana studies, and as well as with other ethnic studies programs you learn, one of the things that you learn is your history of your people, who you are, and I started to become politicized through the Chicana studies programs. Isaura Rivera talks about her politicization as a product of her identity as an undocumented woman in Los Angeles. And I provide this quote, which is in Spanish, which I could explain after I read it. Pero a mí me llamaba la atención cuando la migra estaba ahí, avisaban unos a otros en los negocios. Entonces mi mamá nos llamaba a la casa. No vayan a salir porque la migra está allí en la esquina de la Sunset y la Echo Park en la Pioneer. Y a mí me llamaba la atención de que, pues claro, yo no entendía, nomás sabía que tenía que vivir al margen. Fui aprendiendo que se vive al margen. So what she describes in this quote is her understanding of how Latinos and Latinas were picked up in the ICE raids in Echo Park, and she describes this understanding of viviendo al margen, which is understanding of the overall discrimination that Latinos face and the overall sort of oppressive situation it is to be undocumented and to be Latino. So then the second theme is proximity to Salvadoran activists. Angela Zambrano describes, in fact, one of the ways I got involved and motivated at the beginning was because I would translate for the refugees, their stories. And I would go to the churches or the universities and I would translate for the refugees. And in a way, I was like absorbing all these testimonies. So I got, there was a point where you got to do something about this. So what Angela describes is, as a student at the People's College of Law, she began to take depositions of Salvadoran refugees' testimonies of the violence in El Salvador. So it was her exposure to the testimonies and closest to the proximity to Salvadoran activists that started teaching her about the situation in El Salvador. And with Isaura Rivera, she says, I think that two things play into this. One is that I was already wanting to do something of significance, and the other is that Carmen had the wisdom to groom me, to take me in a way because I didn't know anything, but she had the wisdom to keep me safe because it was not easy. It was not an easy thing to be in a group, even if you are from the same race, and much less if you're not Salvadoran, if you're not Salvadoreña. So Isaura here talks about the friendship she develops with Salvadoran activists, and in particular, she talks about Carmen, who was one of the members of the Asociación de Mujeres Progresistas en El Salvador, who sort of took her in and embraced her regardless of the fact that she wasn't Salvadoran. So one of the most interesting things that I found through the research is this notion of transcending identity barriers, because one of the reasons I became interested, as I mentioned in the introduction, of understanding Mexican solidarity is to see how people who have common histories of oppression sort of unite and identify with each other's struggle. And these two quotes illustrate the ideas of eventually transcending what is national identities, what is any sort of identity that kind of separates people, right? So Angela Zambrano describes, I am telling you that I learned so much through my work with CISPES. I really understood the difference between the government and the people. In the United States, and I think all over the world, I think it is really important to understand. It is really important to embrace. And Isaura Rivera describes, and I felt that it didn't matter that it was in El Salvador. I thought it could be Mexico. We are divided by boundaries, and yet it's true, we eat different things. We prepare different things in a different way, but we are the same thing. When the migra of that town picked up someone, they were all Mexicanos, punto. When the police, when they were arresting people, there was no difference. They were all Mexicanos, everybody. They had a slot for Mexicans, so it was what the right wing was doing in El Salvador. When they captured anybody, everybody was a comunista, punto. So the conclusions of my study. So critical consciousness formations in a politically effervescent context. So the personal experiences of Isaura Rivera and Angela Zambrano as undocumented women in Los Angeles, California, and their understanding of viviendo al margen, so their political consciousness of the overall Latino realities in Los Angeles, in combination with the Salvadoran agency in creating solidarity, ultimately motivated them to participate in solidarity. And ultimately, one of the last themes is that solidarity becomes a mutually empowering process when we can transcend identity borders and identify with someone else's struggle. Thank you.